So as we've reached the end of the Clone Wars in battle analysis, I figured let's discuss some of the major changes that are going on across the galaxy because there are lots of things in motion at this point in time. One of the most dramatic shifts is on the world of Kamino, one of the most strategically significant worlds for the Republic, and now one of the most strategically significant worlds for the Empire. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So, the war is over, and the Galactic Republic is in the process of transitioning into the Galactic Empire, but a lot of things are in flux, and a lot of things are changing, and one of the most dramatic places where these changes can be seen is not actually the capital of Coruscant, but the world of Kamino, home of the clone army and one of the greatest strategic assets to the Republic as it transitions to the Empire. So let's just start with Order 66. Order 66 was followed by the clones on Kamino, the same as it was followed by clones across the galaxy, and this resulted in the death of Jedi leadership on Kamino, and likely the purging of a few locals who may have been sympathetic to the Jedi. With the world now firmly under the control of Imperial forces, the planet was put into a sort of lockdown. Anything approaching the planet was forced to provide access codes before being allowed to land or be destroyed by the fleet in orbit, a much more strict security protocol than was in place during the war. This is likely to protect the valuable asset that Kamino was from both an internal uprising and possible attacks by separatist sympathizers or new rebel cells that were formed in the first few days of the rise of the Empire. However, the strategic significance of Kamino was compounded by the presence of key Imperial leadership on the planet, most notably Governor Tarkin, who was sent there shortly following the rise of the Empire to discuss the future of the Imperial military, most notably to oversee the retirement of the cloning program in favor for a much larger recruitment program, and I've got plenty of videos on that. But ultimately, that put Kamino and its key population centers like Tipoca City square in the sights of the Empire for their first major set of crackdowns. The Imperials likely saw Kamino as a threat. Kamino could easily raise a new army as they had done during the Clone Wars, and this army could be trained and prepared to fight against the Imperial military, and I think there was probably some admission within the Imperial military that stormtroopers would simply not be as effective as clone troopers who had been trained from birth. So there was this fear that a much more capable army could be raised by the Kaminoans, which I'm sure was present within Imperial leadership. But furthermore, there was the idea that the Empire did have needs for cloning, but not for creating a large clone army. Instead, the cloning program began shifting over to the purpose of cloning Palpatine for his plan to, well, cheat death, really. So, fearing a potential uprising from the Kaminoans and the possibility of a clone rebellion, the Imperials were already fairly skeptical of using the Kaminoans for continuing cloning programs, so the decision was made to move the heart of the Imperial cloning program to another facility, Mount Tantus. This left Kamino and Tipoca City, the home of the Kaminoan cloning program, as a liability, and would ultimately result in its destruction, likely ordered by either the highest tiers of the Imperial military or the Emperor himself. The clones who were in the process of maturing on Kamino and being trained to join the clone army were all shifted to other jobs. Those old enough to see military service likely began a relatively brief stint in the Imperial military, while those too young to serve were used as test subjects at other facilities. And with all of the valuable assets extracted from Tipoca City, and the world already being seen as a liability, the decision was made to execute Kaminoan leadership and destroy Tipoca City itself so that it couldn't be used against the Empire. This resulted in the slagging of Tipoca City we see in The Bad Batch. And the last thing I think is worth mentioning is that Kamino had become somewhat of a symbol, not just to the clone troopers, but to a lot of the galaxy. It was the home of the Republic's army, the home of the clone army that the Republic raised to fight the separatists. So it stood as sort of a symbol of the Republic, like many other elements around the galaxy, and that's something that the Empire wanted to do away with. We see this on Coruscant, we see this in the Imperial military itself, and perhaps that's one of the motives for the destruction of Kamino. It was a symbol of a time gone by that the Empire wanted to snuff out. But regardless of their motives, with the destruction of Tipoca City, the story of Kamino's prominence within the Republic and the Galactic Empire came to an end. the Imperial cloning program would move on to other facilities, and while it would keep a few key Kaminoan officials on board, they wouldn't last long, as problems with Project Necromancer would lead to, well, the death of most of Necromancer's leadership. So that leaves Kamino as just one of the many examples of the Empire trying to snuff out things that were loyal to the Old Republic that could potentially pose a threat to their new reign. There are lots of other examples, like, for example, the purge that occurred on Kashyyyk shortly following the end of the battle there. If you'd like to learn about what happened to Kashyyyk following the Clone Wars, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I'd like to let me know down in the comments why you think the Empire really destroyed Tipoca City. Do you think it was the threat of a clone uprising from the cloning facilities there? Do you think it was simply to remove that remnant of the Republic from the galaxy? Or do you think there's another purpose? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.